Hey friends and family, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and this morning I noticed that Mascha dropped her next installment of Top Tarot Trumps, which today features Justice. Now, today I'm actually going to show my cards in preference of order from least to favorite, and I'm not even showing you the backs of the cards. I'm just going to be producing the cards as I talk about them. Before I show you my cards, I will tell you the things that I prefer to see in a Justice card. And all of us, if we're honest, have preferences we prefer to see in any given higher order card or triumph card or trump card, right? There's certain things that make us like the portrayal of a concept on the cards. And for me, I have a few preferences. Now, I'm not going to refuse to use a deck because these requirements aren't met, but it would be a reason why I would enjoy using the deck. For Justice, number one, I don't want to see any blindfold. Why is that? Because I believe, and I understand the argument that Justice is blind. I mean, I can understand somebody arguing that, but for me, Justice isn't blind because true justice needs to see the truth, needs to see what's going on. Aside from not having blindfolds, I prefer if she's looking straight at us, right? I prefer that because she doesn't need to be distracted. She just needs to see directly, right? I prefer to see the scales of justice askew. I don't want to see even scales. Why? Because I don't think true justice is equity. I think true justice is fairness. Let's look at an example. A person who steals formula or baby food because they're in dire poverty and they haven't been able to provide food for a child or an infant, and they're in a dire situation and they need to do a desperate thing, and they steal either formula or baby food. And if they're caught, I think they deserve different consideration from somebody who is stealing baby food or formula because they're going to sell it to the black market, or that they have some kind of illegal ring selling baby food, on the side. I don't think they should get the same consequence. Do you? I don't think so. So I think the scales of justice need to be askew, because I think they need to not be equitable. I think justice, to be true justice, needs to be fair. And fairness doesn't always mean equity. I think we need to see the sword, but of course, and most tarot decks, if they have no other feature of what I've mentioned, it'll show the sword. Because the sword shows the swift sword of justice, that justice, their action will be taken. Another thing I want to see is recognition that justice is a virtue, right? I think justice needs to be seen as a virtue. And that is usually identified in some way, either by the wings of virtue or a scalloped halo, depending on how the card makers created the deck. Now, not all, admittedly, as tarot emigrated from country to country, some of the ingredients, say for example the wings of an angel, which would indicate that it was a virtue, right, became bastardized or corrupted, and they became wingback chairs or something like that. I'll kind of accept wingback chairs because it's sort of still suggestive of wing. And the other thing that I need to see for justice to really resonate with me is the number 8. Not number 11. I don't want to see number 11. And the reason is because I see the shape of 8 as showing a continuum. And if you lay the 8 sideways, it becomes the lemniscate, which even more clearly demonstrates or shows a continuum. And for justice to work for a society, it needs to be a continuum. It needs to be stable. right? It needs to be a stable feature of society. And I think 8 demonstrates that, not just because I prefer to see it as number 8, but because the number 8 itself shows it. It's right there in the number. Now, of course, in the day when they used Roman numerals, we wouldn't have had that. And so I cut some slack for some of the earliest decks. Okay, in order from least to favorite, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, this is not all my decks. I went through quite a few of them, though. For justice, for this video, I went through more of my decks than I ever have for any of my other videos. But I am sure that I'll be overlooking some of the decks that I have that do demonstrate all of the virtues I mentioned. Honorable mention for number 5, which is still in the 5, okay, is the Charles VI, this one published by Marco Benedetti. We have the virtue showing, that justice is a virtue. We have the scales slightly askew. It's not dramatically uneven, but it is askew. They're not even. She has, of course, her sword. She's not looking directly at us, but she is not blindfolded. So she's not blindfolded. So that's a plus. There's no number on her, but remember in the 1400s when this would have been created that Italy didn't put numbers on their cards because they knew the level of importance that they put on each card, and it varied from region to region. So I don't really know, and I have it written down somewhere and it would be easy for me to find, but offhand I don't really know what number they gave justice, but she has most of the other ingredients that I'm satisfied. I wanted to pull, for number 4, I wanted to pull, for this procedure, I wanted to pull a card that would have been published for the everyday common person. This card, for example, the Charles VI Tarot would have been created for, I think, the Estensi family, right? So it would have been created for a noble family with money. But I wanted to see what deck what justice appeared for in a deck for the everyday man. What were the concepts of justice that mattered to the everyday man? And for this, I'm pulling Sullivan Hisman's Tarot Sheet Revival, the Budapest deck. Now, okay, I agree. The card is numbered, but it's not given number 8, but it's given number 20. So number 20 suggests to me that even though it's not given number 8, and even though it's not identified as a virtue, we see a crown. It's not quite a scalloped crown. Maybe that's what they meant. But I like the fact that they have given it such a high-ranking number that even though it's not identified per se as a virtue, we know that it is an extremely important concept by virtue of the fact that it's got such a high-ranking number. Of course, it's got the sword, and we clearly see the scales are askew. She looks a little on the what's the word when you're cross-eyed? She's got a little bit of a cross-eyed thing going, but I think we could probably assume that it was intended to be looking directly at us. So she's got most of the ingredients, and I think it's very interesting that the common man would have resonated or understood justice in this way. She has a crown. Maybe it's not the crown of virtue, but it's important also by giving it a very high rank, right? And the scales represent fairness, I think. I think fairness is represented by scales that are askew because it shows fairness, not equity. Okay. Number 3 position I've given to the Pierre Madini, and it was probably on my mind because I recently featured this deck in a video where I did commentary, and if you haven't seen it, please go back a couple videos and you'll be able to see my commentary on this Madini. This publication is by Marco Benedetti. Now, by the time, we got to France, The virtuous wings got corrupted, I suppose, and they became wingback chairs, which I'll accept. She has her swords of justice, and her scales are askew. They are not even. She's looking right at us. So this woman, this personification of justice pretty much satisfies my preferences. In my second place, my second position for the nobles that I'm showing, excuse me, the justice cards that I'm showing is the noble. This one is represented by Artisan Tarot because I like the graphic nature they gave it. So here we have justice with the wings, which are close enough to wings. Of course, she has a sword. She's number 8. Her scales are askew. It's not real evident, but they are askew. And she is looking at us straight on. And as you know, so we have the virtue represented by the wings, which don't seem to be part of a chair back. We don't see it connected to what she's sitting on. So they still look like they're wings to me. And my number one preference in a tarot deck for representation of justice is the John Dodal Tarot of Marseille, which I think really, let me check where it was actually printed. It reigns from Lyon. No, I almost said Marseille, but it reigns from Lyon. Now we have all the ingredients. Plus, all right, let me show you. She has her sword of justice with, she'll act. Her scales in person look askew. They're more noticeably askew than in the Noble deck. She's got her wings of virtue that don't appear to be attached to a chair. In case we miss that, she's got a crown that's suggestive of a halo of virtue. She's got her eyes wide open. She's not blindfolded. And here she even really looks a little on the weary side, because I think being put in a situation, fairness, and hearing everything and seeing everything can make a person tired, right? So those are my 5 favorite decks that I've looked at. I may have others that satisfy the bill, but those are the ones that I pulled out that satisfy the bill. And I hope you agree that, or I hope you learned something, or that you just, take what I give you for food for thought. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind, and do no harm.